front row. We don't bite. Sometimes. Yeah, unless only my husband now. I'm Felicia Madison. I'm the booker of West Side and also the founder of Funny Stand Up, Funny University of New York. I just want to point out, Sophia, she was checking you in. She's the associate director. She just ran away. And I'm going to pass the mic down so that you, Joe and Eddie can introduce themselves, but I just wanted to do a quick intro. So let's give it up now for Joe DeVito.
Thank you. My name is Joe DeVito. I've been stand-up comic for 23 years and full-time since 2007 or so. I came from a writing background, so one of the things I'm known for is I also do writing classes and coaching with comics. And I think that's all they need to know about me for now. Professional stand-up comic for quite a while. Now, Eddie Brill.
Yay. Good job. I've been at it even longer. Next month in a row it'll be 40 years. And, yeah. The dead guy. 45. I still love it more and more. Just came from Florida where I did some gigs and got off the plane, unpacked and then came here for this. So, and one of the whole ideas of this is that, comedy is a community, especially in New York. It's a great thing about New York, it's such a good community. So we want to create that community. So it's a place you guys can come to where you don't have to pay to come and just chat and get to meet people and have a chat. So, I've been involved in every part of the business, and there's still more that I haven't done that I will try because I'm crazy happy to wake up every day and know that I'm doing this kind of thing. And so that's a small part of my story. I ran a comedy club 40 years ago. I started it and became the Boston Comedy Club. It was called Paper Moon. And then I just was hosting every week, and then the next thing, which is one of the most important jobs in the show. And here I am, still alive, still doing stand-up, and still loving it. So there you go.
Do we need the microphone?
Well, the only reason we do is because we're recording, so we don't really need it. But if you could just move that off to the side, that'd be great. So we're recording and putting it up on YouTube, so they won't be able to hear it. Basically what we like to do is open it for questions. But before we start, we all do teach here. I teach in my Type 5 class that's starting in July. Eddie teaches a monthly seminar that, when's the next one?
It's not till the
It's not till the fall. And Joe DeVito also has one coming up September 23rd, one-day seminar. So check our website for all the upcoming wonderful classes. So if someone wants to be brave and start the conversation, if not, I'm just going to keep chatting.
This is a cliche, but it may appeal. Were you funny kids? Were you class clowns? Were you similar in personality, say in the 5th to 7th grades?
Someone was once asked that question, and they said, "Do you know any class clowns that became stand-ups?" They don't generally become stand-up comedians. No, I was not, and actually everyone was very surprised when I started doing stand-up. Especially my mom. She's like, "But you're not funny."
So
That's why I'm doing stand-up. So, yeah.
I was class clown.
Were you?
Yes, it's one of my many high school
First
achievements.
one.
Really? Part
I
of
stand corrected.
a lifetime of desperate attempts for attention. Started when I was young. I grew up in a family where having a good sense of humor was very important. My uncles and my parents and my grandfather, all great joke tellers. Just the way they looked at the world was to try and find a funny comment or sarcastic comment or something like that. You don't have to have been a class clown. There's some comics that you'll talk to them off stage. They're very serious people. If you've ever seen an interview with Steve Martin,
Yes.
very serious guy. And I guess the flip side of that is there's comedians I've been in green rooms with where you're really like, I wish you would stop doing that and save it for the stage. It's getting annoying. I think there's something in that class clown temperament. I like to tell people that the idea that comedians are tortured geniuses, let's not flatter ourselves. But I do think
Torture, for sure.
Definitely the low my genius part. I do think that if you think everything is fine the way it is, nothing compels you to get on stage and speak to a group of strangers. So I think the common element for a lot of us is a sense of that we were not listened to, or we were not heard. And what's great about stand-up is that you go up to do 5 minutes. For the next 5 minutes, everyone's going to see the world the way you do. So I think that's a very basic human need to be heard, and I think that's something that is common with comedians from all kinds of backgrounds.
Yeah, same for me. I didn't think of myself as a class clown, but my friends did, and they were like, "You were the class clown." I go, "No, I wasn't. I was math and science geek," and that's what I loved. I loved, my parents were very young and very funny, and they loved comedy. And I remember my parents, we were in Las Vegas, and my sister and I were the babysitter in the room, and when they came back from the show, my parents, they were laughing as they came through the door, and I'd never seen my mom so radiant, so happy. And I felt like I wish I could make her laugh. I wanted her to be that. And so we would joke around a lot. It wasn't some of the smartest people I know are comedians, and some of the comedians I know are some of the smartest people I know. But at the same time, it's just that seeking attention, that I always wanted. And, as a kid, I was heavy guy. I'm a heavy guy again now. I'm just doing that for the laughs. And, but you try to find a way to get people to, listen to you, like you for not who you are on the outside, but how you think on the inside. And it's been really, really terrific. And to actually make my mom laugh and to, was just such a thrill that I was able to eventually do that for her. They had comedy albums around the house. We were always, they got me a joke book when I was 5. It was called Joke Riddles and Boners, was the name of the book I remember. I didn't know what boners were at 5. 6, I was a boner guy. But I remember a joke in there that was, what did Tennessee? And the answer was the same thing, Arkansas. And that was it. I was wordplay. I saw George Carlin on television, and I never dreamt I would do that, but it turned out that I got to, work with all these people. So it's pretty special.
I just say I don't.
All right.
I don't think you see a lot of star quarterbacks doing this.
Yeah.
I know I get annoyed, like, as much as I love Gary Goldman, when I hear him talk about depression, I'm like, but you're tall. Depressed about it. So, yeah, it's a certain temperament.
Yeah, so you're either an attention seeker, crazy, or I found out ADHD really helps. I was talking to my kids about, they said I'm undiagnosed ADHD. I said, no, I just think when I'm looking at something, I have like this thing in the back thinking about something else. And they're like, that's ADHD. So I think we just look at the world a different way, and we examine things that most people we're observant, and we're very good with words. But anyway, next question.
Well, it's kind of what you were talking about. So much of what you do is situational, sort of take something you're experiencing and, exaggerate or whatever you do with it. Do you find yourself sometimes, I'm going through this experience, I wonder what's funny about that? Do you so you're sort
I
of
don't
there?
wonder and immediately figure it out.
I mean,
My kids,
Good question.
my kids text me things, and I text them back, this is gonna be a great joke. So I see it right away, but go ahead.
Yeah, it becomes a way of looking at the world. And there are some people who, they just don't see those funny things out there. I heard Chris Rock describe it as the old movies where only one person can see a ghost. And they're pointing out, but don't you see that? And people, they just don't see it. So it's a way of looking at the world. I remember being on the corner of 8th Avenue and 53rd, and I noticed there was someone standing next to me. It was a guy in the full Lance Armstrong cycling outfit, but he was holding a city bike. And I started laughing, because to me that meant he was wearing the outfit at a certain point in time, but there was no bike. He was just walking around the outfit. So to me, I saw that and I started laughing. I looked around and everyone else, in a way, I almost felt bad for them, because I thought, here I am, this joke has been given to me, and they're not even paying attention to it. So it does become a way of looking at the world, and you start to see the experiences in your life as material. You start to look at things that way. But it's like learning a language. At first you start off with the simpler ways of processing it. You want to know how to and then you become conversant, and then hopefully you become fluent, where you don't have to think anymore. And I think that is part of what happens when you've been doing it long enough, and if you have the talent and the skill, you'll see things and right away, you just react to it as a joke.
Yeah, I've recently heard it many times, and it's the newest thing I've learned in my career, is to tell your truth. And people say, well, I didn't like that Dave Chappelle joke. Well, he's not here to please you. And sorry, if you just wait for the next person, they'll be funny too. And and I've also heard Rick Rubin just say that recently as well. I don't write music for the audience, I write it for myself. And Sid Caesar said, comedy is, the foundation for comedy is the truth, and you put a curly Q on the end of it. That's how old Sid Caesar was. Curly Q. But it's really based in the truth. Like when I would see Richard Pryor perform, he was telling his truth. And I think that's the key. But there's so many different kinds of comedians. There are comedians that we've never seen yet, made up of you guys, that are going to do something that's your truth that's different. David Brenner said, it's like you're dancing on the edge of the leaf, and you're just about to fall over, but you're dancing, and you're having a good time, and you're in a place that not other people see. And that what happens, it sort of clicks in you, and then all of a sudden, like I remember doing stand-up at the beginning and just, getting laughs even though I sucked. And then it was because performance skills were intact. But eventually the writing matches the performance. And I've seen, Brian Kiley is this comedian who was such a great writer, but he would sweat in an icebox. And it was, hard to watch him because he was such a brilliant comic. Eventually, by stage time, which is the ultimate teacher, he became a great comic that did Leno, Letterman, and Conan, and wrote for Conan. So there's no, even though there's some rules, there really not many rules. It's like who you are, your truth, and once you get it, it just flows out of you like a river.
I think the biggest problem is, I find in young comedians, is a funny story there's a difference between a funny story and stand-up. So you might see something that's funny and come up here and tell us about it, but that's a funny story. Stand-up has a specific structure to it, which is kind of what you were saying, the more you do it, now I start thinking in joke structure. So that's a big thing that a lot of young comedians have to learn. Someone else?
As a comedian, I feel like there's a lot of festivals out there. I feel like there's some that it's really easy to get into, and then there's some that are more difficult to get into. Do you guys have any good recommendations of festivals that were really
Never
fun?
join a club that will take me as a member. Do you guys have any experience with festivals?
Yeah, I've run a few of them.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the thing about comedy festivals, there's a lot of comedy festivals where the people in charge are lazy and they don't go out to get sponsorship to pay comedians, because comedians are supposed to get paid for their job. You go to a benefit and the waiters are getting paid and the person who made the food is getting paid, and you're working, you're like, well, you could do it for free, That a lot of people are like that, where they don't, like I ran a festival in Nebraska for 10 years honoring Johnny Carson, and we made sure we paid the comedians, we flew them out there, we put them up, and we fed them and everything, because that's what you should do if you're providing this kind of comedy. So there are a lot of famous festivals that are poorly run and sometimes lose out. We ran the Woodstock Comedy Festival. It was mainly take care of the women and children shelter in that area. And then the festival was really good for a while, and then the people got bored and they stopped. So the key is to be the funniest person you can be. Make a nice group of friends, because it's who you know. Most every gig I've ever gotten, it's who I know. And then let those people know that you're hilarious, and they can't help but book you. They might screw you over and not pay you. They might charge you to watch a videotape, which it's creepy. But they're all charging now. Yeah, we didn't. The part of my job was to go look for comedians, and part of my budget was to go out and fly around the country or ask, friends of mine.
That's
who
a
was
different
fun.
type of festival.
Yeah,
They don't do those festivals anymore.
Well, we're still coming out. There's a Catskill Festival that's being created now, again, that part of the country just trying to do good things, and it'll be small at the beginning, and hopefully, get better and better. But the key really is to be in a community of people who are helping each other out. I know there's a lot of shitty ones and things you have to get through, but that's part of it. If it was easy, everyone would do it. That's sort
Yeah,
of-
I would think I would just be a little discerning about where you apply. I think if you go at it as a fun experience to meet other comedians and network, that's what you should expect from it. I think you should look at how much they charge and also what you get if there is a winner or if there's any sort of sponsorship or anything that will benefit you when you go. Otherwise, I find in terms of like growing your career and getting noticed, if there's no one there or nothing that's gonna happen, it's really just a fun time for you to perform comedy.
Yeah, like the Galway Comedy Festival, they don't allow agents or press or anything, and everyone's having the time of their lives. It's the best comics, English-speaking comics from around the world, from New Zealand and Australia and Ireland and England and US, Canada, and it's really one of the best festivals in the world because they're really just taking care of comedians, and that's what it's all about. It's a really good time where creative people get together and bounce ideas, and then you see, I'm in this group of people, so I must be okay at it, kind of thing. That makes a big
Where
difference.
was that?
Galway in Ireland, so Western Ireland. You had a question?
Oh, I did Eddie's festival in Nebraska, second year, I think.
Yeah.
And one of the things that made it such a great experience was that hanging out with all these comics, and some that I knew was friends with, and some that I was meeting for the first time. The performing was great, the shows were great, everyone treated us wonderfully, but it was the hanging out where we were all staying with a bunch of really funny people. I really laughing so hard. I think one of the unfortunate things about being a comic is that you stop laughing at comedy. You see someone who's a good comic and you go, that's funny.
Yeah.
Enjoy it. And I remember watching, who's the guy from Texas, Mike?
Yeah, McRae.
Yeah, Mike McRae and Andy Pitts going back and forth with doing impersonations and just being blown away. So the festivals are very different than when I started out 20 years ago, but I would give the same recommendation I would for entering a contest. And that's ask yourself, will I enjoy this if I don't win the contest? Because the people who get the most out of these, it's very rarely the people who win. No slight against them. It's, are you going there, are you going through the process of preparing your material, which you're gonna have to learn how to do. You're gonna have to learn how to prepare your material for a spotlight, which is, again, a skill you have to develop. Will you like the people who you're with? And do you feel like someone's taking advantage of you financially? Those are the kind of things you have to think of, because I know people who've done the one in Asheville.
Yeah.
And they say, yeah, there's no big deals, but we had great time.
Yeah.
And networking with other comics is where the bulk of your work is going to come from. So really think of it, am I going to have a good time? Are they charging me? Does it look a little shady? Is it too expensive? Things like that, because like I said, a lot of times the people who win the contest aren't the real winners.
Right.
It's the people who went there and made good contacts, and maybe they got third place, but they got the attention.
I told all the comics that no one's winning. We're gonna pretend, because the audiences want to have that, but everyone's getting paid the same. We're all having fun, and it took the pressure off of everybody. Because winning, how can you say one person's funnier than the other person? You can't win in comedy. I mean, you could, like 7 points for poise, 3 points. What are you judging? I remember going to the festival in Atlanta, and there was a thing like this we put on, and I was saying, it's shitty to charge comedians to audition, and then I never got invited back, and I found out why, because they were charging. But I'm glad, I don't want to go back. I didn't want to, but it was funny how it's like, okay, I didn't get the call the next year.
Yeah, and the rejection letters make for good content on social media.
You had a question all the way over here.
Yes, I was wondering, how do you feel about adjusting your material based on both the audience and the audience size? Because I feel like I sometimes accidentally do my Manhattan jokes in Brooklyn and my Brooklyn jokes in Manhattan.
And how do they work for you?
It does not work when I accidentally switch it around. But I'm a little nervous because I've never done like a very, very big room. And I do try to adjust it a little bit between 3 to 100 people, but I don't know if you have to like slow it down, if it's 1,000, or if you have to
when you have your material that's like in order when you're starting and you do it no matter what, you know. Someone passes out in front of you, you still go on to the next joke. And when you were, the ability to like just change the order and pick and go in a totally different direction was a real growth time for me. And I think for a lot of young comedians, I think you're still maybe in that early phase where you're just really still not that comfortable with the material yet to go off course. And that's why you're feeling a little fear. But that does come with time.
Yeah, because I remember when I first went to England, and I would say to the loo instead of the bathroom, and this, and the other comedians like, shut the fuck up. We know what a bathroom is. We've been to bathrooms. We've watched American television. So I don't change my act for the audience. I might say something about the area, something like that, but I'm doing what I do for them. And hopefully, you know when you see someone who has a nice backbone, it's very attractive. So if you're there changing for them, they're like, well, you know, that comes off as sort of soft and weak. But if you have like I do stuff, what I learned is how to do human material about, like if I have a dream and, you know, I wake up from a dream, everyone in the world wakes up from a dream. So it's cooler to write material that everyone in the humans get as opposed to some guy from England only gets. Like Brooklyn and Manhattan, it's not that big of a difference. There could be jokes, like I have a couple of British jokes that I won't do in England because it's really about them in a sense, and it's not. I've tried them, you know, and then I realized, oh wait a second, it's not going to work here. But mostly the Brooklyn Manhattan thing, just be you, tell your truth, have fun, don't give a shit about trying to please people. Just make sure you're telling your truth and pleasing what makes you laugh and what feels good. That's the art.
To me, it's kind of interesting to hear someone say that there's such a difference between Brooklyn and Manhattan material. As someone who lives on Long Island and works the road, it's to me, those are I see those as almost the same place. But when you're still very new, so you have a limited amount of material, you just haven't had enough time. So that can be tough because you think, what do I shift to? I don't have other stuff to go to. What eventually you want to have happen is that your material becomes so personal, it starts to work in almost any environment. And one thing I'll throw at you guys, if you want to write this down, is that you don't deliver material, the material delivers you. So you're not up there saying things. What you're doing is you're introducing yourself to a group of people. And when you start to look at it that way, individual things about a topic or a TV commercial, it's not really about that. Every joke you tell will really be about you. And once you're able to do that, a really cool thing happens is that you don't have to change your material very much based on where you are. Because you're still talking about yourself. You know, I think it's natural when you start. I know I did this. You start to think you make jokes about exterior things. And you learn how to write a joke, and you learn how to turn from a setup to a punchline, and you learn the skills. But part of the growing pains is, you know, you said you're 10 months in. I guarantee 6 months from now, you'll look at the jokes you do now that get the best response. And the good news will be, you'll probably be mortified by it, because you'll be that much better. So keep in mind, you're really telling the story of you. Now, obviously, sometimes I'll come into a club in New York City and I'll say to the host, where are they from? Oh, I didn't ask. Oh, great, because I had a TV commercial I want to talk about, and everyone's from Finland. I got to make my adjustment. What I learned from that is, stop talking about TV commercials, talk about yourself.
Yeah, it's like Nina Simone. I always look at her and Celine Dion. That's my example. Celine Dion sings all the notes correctly and gets them all right, and Nina Simone makes mistakes, and she's coming from her gut, where Celine Dion is coming from her head. So we get out of our head, and the brain of the body is the gut, and that's what comics touch. Yeah.
And if it means a lot to you, it'll mean a lot to them. I know from my own experience, one of the jokes that I had when I started, and I'm a joke guy, so it was pretty corny. There's nothing wrong with that. But it was a very corny joke. And some comedians took me aside and they were like, yeah, you're going to want to get rid of that joke. And I thought, that's my best joke. And what happens is you might have jokes that they're good earners. And you think, that joke, I'm not really into it, but it does well. The first time you go up and tell that joke and it doesn't do well, you'll think, you know what? I feel like a piece of shit because even I don't like that joke. So as you go through your growing pains with the different audiences, just keep asking, do I think this is funny? And eventually, like, we know we do a lot of corporate gigs and stuff. You'll have restrictions as to, like curse or without sex. If you're a professional, you learn to work with that. And one last thing I want to say about the size of audiences. Those New York and Brooklyn audiences, I hesitate to call them crowds. If you learn how to do stand-up for 8 people in the room, 800 people is easy. Because it's the intimacy of the smaller crowd. You'll learn how to treat a big crowd with the intimacy of a small conversation, and you'll learn how to give that small audience a real show. So I encourage everybody, whatever your natural or normal performing environment is, go other places, because you want to cross-train, you want to get those skills up. So, but as you start to do the bigger rooms, work more on your posture when you come on stage with your shoulders back like you're ready to buck them up, you know what I mean? Like, that's what you want to do.
I learned to just walk out and say, let's go, I'm ready, I've got this. I give the attitude, I've got this, because I do. I've been doing it a long time. I got it, I'm ready to go. And if I make a mistake, we'll have fun together with it. It's reality theater, and that's one of the greatest things about stand-up. One time I worked at Caroline's, and David Brenner had the main 10 o'clock, and I had the 12 o'clock show, and it was sold out for him, and it was 15 people for me in a room that seats 300 people. And I was like, fuck, oh, come on, I can't believe it. What? And he yelled at me. He said, don't ever get mad at those 15 people. They paid to come to the show. They, had babysitters and dinners in New York City and all this stuff. You give them the best show you ever had. And I went out and I had one of the best shows I ever had because I learned from other comedians, that you have to do that. I recently performed for 3 people, and it was a room that was so shitty in every way because the ceilings were too high, the lighting was horrible, the sound was awful, and the 3 people were all the way in the back, and because there was supposed to be 250 people, and then they all had COVID and they couldn't come. So those 3 people were sitting in the back. So the other comics went on, they talked from the stage, and they did fine. I just went and sat with them, the 3 people, and now they're my close friends, and they got me this phenomenal gig for ridiculous money, and I wasn't trying to, but it just happened to, that was more beneficial. I had a much better time. And I did an hour and 20 minutes with them, and I didn't even realize, I looked at my watch and went, oh, let's get out of here and let's go have fun.
Also, you need, if your jokes are only appealing to a small audience, then how are you going to grow? Like, you're going to want to grow an audience where you could perform. And I happen to fall in the category of being very niche, and I have that problem a lot. Like, I'll get in front of an audience of all young people and be like, fuck me. But then you come up with something that makes it identifiable. Like, none of you are parents of a mom, or do you have a mom? They all laugh. You have to figure out that connection so that you can sort of segue into those jokes. But the more universal your jokes, the more successful. If you can be niche and figure out a way to apply it to a larger group, but it's hard.
There was a guy back there.
Yeah, question for everyone. Knowing your experience on stage, and that the experience also means that you've encountered several different cultural touch points along the way, and have rode the wave through a lot of different changes along the way. So a little bit about just like making adjustments, being flexible enough to, adaptable, but then also I would love to hear about how that plays into social media, how you've adapted to the use of social media, how you make it work for you, and just some observations about maybe even the way that that's kind of changed, maybe like soundbite comedy, and
What's interesting about soundbite comedy, it does work, and it's fantastic, and it helps. It's like when you do a television show, you do a 5-minute set, and it's only a cut from your album. That's what the way you look at it. Same thing with internet. You're doing I'm an old man, so with a young heart, and so far, and so pretty much when I'm, the internet at the beginning is me looking at baseball scores, and now I realize how important it is to do that other stuff. You guys want to talk about that same thing?
I remember when comedians first started putting clips up on social media. It started right around the pandemic, I think. And there were a lot of comedians, like the more established ones were like, I'm not putting my material on social media. They were so snooty about it. And the younger comedians started doing it. And it got to the point where the younger comedians were so much better than the older comedians at it. And everyone adapted to it. It's unfortunately a reality of comedy right now. And I think you can be successful without it, but I think it's really helpful to have it. Like I say, from a booking perspective, if I have two comedians and I'm choosing between the two, and they're equally funny, and one has an amazing social media following, I'm running a business, you know, I'll choose the one with the social media following. That's if they're equally funny. You know, funny first. I think social media has caused a lot of problems with comedy because to me it's very frustrating to see these people that are not stand-ups but like acting like stand-ups and doing jokes and doing skits that like are so hack, you know, but they're funny on social media. Like if I got up and told one of these jokes on the stage, the audience would be like, you know. But it is something you have to adapt to, and it is something that almost all comedians worry about. And also people worry about putting their material on and burning it so they can't use it again, which is bullshit. You know, no one scrolls back 5 years to see a joke that you put on social media, and you can always take it down. I have someone that always emails me and says, you know, I'm about to go on late night, can you please take down all the clips that I have on your social media that I'm doing? And I do. Some
Social media is not something that I'm particularly good at. I need to work harder on it.
That's why I don't book them.
My MySpace numbers are not.
Yeah.
These are even my references.
12 million on Drybar though.
Well, maybe. Well, I mean,
Love your Friendster stuff.
You got it right.
But I mean, obviously there are people who they're making careers out of social media stuff, and there's some. I mean, I find the endless, very
Good night.
boring crowd work clips. I don't enjoy them, but people seem to get a kick out of them. But I do see people who they're taking the format and doing something new and interesting with it, and I think that's great. I'm not a hater because I can look at that and say, I'm not in competition with that. I'm in competition with myself. I don't think there's anybody flipping the coin over me and Matt Wright. Okay, I'm not going to sweat that. But yeah, what's nice is that it's eliminated a lot of the gatekeepers, just as this did with music. You know, there were bands that I loved from the 60s that didn't get album deals, and you're like, where can we find someone saved the tape or something like that? But the flip side is now anybody can put their stuff out there. The problem is anybody can put their stuff out there. So there is a deluge of lower quality stuff. But find a way to make it work for you. You know, I'm a word guy, so I enjoy putting jokes on Twitter. You know, I mean, I have a writing job during the day, which burns me out a little bit, but find the thing that works for you, because there's stuff that it's just a new way to be funny. That meme of the Real Housewife crying and pointing, and then the snotty-looking white cat next to her, I don't know how to explain to people what's funny about that. I've laughed at every single one of those I've seen. So it's like having another conduit to get your comedy out there. And
Right, and if it works for you, there's nothing wrong with it.
go for it.
You know, what happens often is that a comedian will be online and they'll do these quick things, and then when they go on the road, they can't do a set. They don't know how to perform for humans again, and so they'll do so what the smart ones do is they host the show and hire 6 friends that really are great stand-ups, and they're just hosting it, and they get a big crowd, and it's a smart way to market it. Even though they're not a great stand-up, I don't find them funny. I find them, you know, I applaud them for putting that energy. What was the first part of the thing you would ask the question?
Yeah, just observing, like living through, like and working through all the different cultural shifts and touch points along the way, and remaining flexible and adaptable.
Well, it's what Joe said.
Yeah.
It's about you.
Yeah.
It's you know, how does that affect you? A lot of the joke, like I had this joke and it was mediocre. All of them. No, I had this one joke that I did years ago, and I got laughs on it, but it was mediocre. And I looked at it again years later, some jokes, and I remembered this, and I go, why isn't that joke working? I go, because I'm not giving, I'm not being vulnerable. I'm not, because that's one of the keys in comedy is vulnerability. It's a strength. You see Bill Burr before he learned how to be more vulnerable, and everybody sucked but him, and now it comes back to bite him in the ass every once in a while. It's much funnier. Well, I had a joke where about Canadian men and women that lived in Hollywood, Florida, where I grew up, and they were all these ugly men and these gorgeous women, and my joke was horrible. It was like these men have these women because of the money in their Speedos or whatever, is kind of a thing. Horrible. And I took it out of my act. And then years later, I changed it why these men have these women, because they might have money, but maybe they're nice guys and not judgmental assholes like me. And the joke changed. It all of a sudden got laughs because I found the vulnerability, how it affected me. What I realized later, many years later, that joke is about me being jealous, not me being an asshole, which I was at the beginning when I first wrote it. And hopefully we all evolve as humans. In our comedy world, you've seen people get shit on because they wrote a horrible joke 6 years ago, and that's a bullshit way to look at any kind of art form. You grow and you evolve, and that's what we should be celebrating.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this whole crowd work phase is going to change the comedy scene, because it is taking on a whole new life of its own. People are doing crowd work specials. It's affecting audiences who are expecting to be interacting now with comedians. I don't know. It's still in the beginning phase, as it's yet to be seen how it's going to alter the comedy scene. Yeah.
I guess, like, Felicia, to your point, I've seen your Instagram and Better Than Sex and all of that. Great.
It's my special, by the way. We did not have sex.
And you have a great crowd working kind of clip pinned about the gay guy who used to make great husbands back in the day. And I guess, how did you evolve to get good at that and to become good at crowd working? And then do you all kind of adapt crowd working to be part of your set, right? They're two distinct skills, but it feels like one is kind of necessary to crowd working in this day and age to be successful for the next.
I think, for some people it just comes naturally. Like, people always say I'm really good at, like, the side, snarky comment, which works well with stand-up, with crowd work. But a lot of the crowd work you see is not necessarily crowd work. I mean, it happened once, and now I do it almost on every show. Like, because I always ask them, single guys, and there's always a gay guy in the audience, and he always says I'm gay, and I always say that comment now. So it seems like it was off the cuff, but like I have my Better Than Sex joke where I told it once, and on the way home, because we interacted, and I didn't have a funny thing to say, on the way home I thought about it, so the next time it
Called
happened.
the audience and said, come back.
Yeah, no, but it happens again. There's
Right.
nothing that a comedian has not heard or seen if they've been on the road and done so. It's not as off the cuff as it seems to you.
Paula Poundstone's the best person I've ever seen in the history of comedy, and also in the history of working the crowd. And I worked with her many years ago in San Francisco for a week, and it was just a lesson in how to do that, how to work the crowd. And what you do is you don't shit on them, you let them step in their own shit. And that's how the crowd works. And so you're never making fun of people, because that's not funny. You're being insecure, and it doesn't come off to me as a really well-rounded person, unless your whole act is, shitting on people. Even Jimmy Carr, who's great at it, it comes back to bite him every once in a while. That's what I learned. I remember Robert Schimmel had a joke. He said, I asked my wife if I can go in the other way, and she pulled out her vibrator and said, let me do you first. and the reason why that works is because he's all macho, he's Mr. Man, and he's in charge, and then he just gets knocked down to reality, where we're all nerds, and at least I am, but most of us are, and we pretend that we're this other person, and then we get knocked down, and then the whole world can relate to that. I see that. You got something on that?
Yeah, as far as crowd work goes, the best way to get good at crowd work is to be comfortable with your material. Because if you're comfortable with your material, then you're free to be acting in the moment. I know one of the big step-ups for me was within my first year, the first time I was on stage, and I felt it, I'm not struggling to think of what comes next. And suddenly there was a sense of freeness, and more freeness that would be ahead of it. So work on your material. lead into the crowd work. To me, when crowd work doesn't work, it's when the comic is up there trying to extract things from the audience. And it stops being a conversation. Then you're using the audience as a prop. And it becomes very tense. And even if you hear the things people are saying, I'll hear people go up and they think hosting is just asking a series of questions like they work for the Census Bureau or something. No, they even say things like, so who's drinking tonight? Well, everyone is. They're required to buy 2. Why would you ask a stupid question like that?
Because of insecurity.
Because there's insecurity. They've heard other people say it, and it's like you want to find ways to communicate with the audience. And then the crowd work will become natural. And really fun things can happen. You'll learn really interesting things because audiences tend to say the same things over and over again. And this is maybe not the nicest word to say, but you'll learn to manipulate them. You'll learn to lead them. I'll give you an example. A classic bit is to say to the audience, who are the married people and who are the single people? And the married people always give you a shit round of applause. And the single people are always much happier. And then you can do your joke about how single people are happier and have results. Okay, so I watched that. I said, okay, you could say, who are the single people? And people respond because you just asked them a question. Who are the married people? But if you say, is this a married crowd? Now that sounds like the same question, doesn't it? But there's no call for them to do anything.
Right.
So if my goal is to say, question to the married people, but I don't want a good response from you, because the joke's better if their response is squashed. So if I say, is this a married crowd? No one knows what to do. Well, let me hear from the single people. Now they all clap. You see how I've manipulated them into getting the response I want from them. So you learn how to do things like that. But if you're up there sweating about it, I mean, there's really nothing worse when you see a comedian looking at someone in the audience like, huh? Yeah, I mean, everybody's like, oh, I don't know, I'm coming here to be part of the show. What the hell? So,
Yeah, I would say 2 things for young comics is don't do crowd work. No, seriously, you get 5 minutes on stage. It's valuable time. And if you start talking to someone, it doesn't do anything for you, and you've just lost 5 minutes to practice your material and get your tight 5 tighter. And it's a crutch. It's a crutch when you feel uncomfortable. It's a crutch when you think it's not working. You just turn to someone, and you're not experienced enough to come. Like it happens all the time. And they ask a question. And they're like, oh, okay, well I have nothing to say about that. And they go to the next person. The next piece of advice: if you're doing crowd work, repeat what the crowd person says.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because no one in the back can hear what they said. So you're having a one-on-one conversation here. So if you're not getting laughs, it's because they have no idea what you're talking about.
yeah. One last thing about crowd work is that when you ask questions, people will answer. It's the strangest thing. I've seen comics come off stage and like, oh, that crowd wouldn't shut up. It's like, well, why did you end everything with a question? If you want to go up and say, you have a joke about going on a cruise, don't go up and say, has anyone ever been on a cruise? Because you know what? You're going to do your stupid cruise joke no matter what they say. So if you go up and say, has anyone ever been on a cruise? And someone goes, no! You're not going to go, oh, I'm just going to do another joke. What you really want to say is, I went on a cruise.
Right. It's about you. It's the same. I had a joke about Adam and Eve. I go, why do Adam and Eve have names? I originally wrote it. And then I changed it. I've often wondered why Adam and Eve have names. It changed the whole joke, the tenor, me in charge of what I'm talking about my idea. I don't need your help. If I need your help, it's going to come off being insecure and maybe shallow, maybe, if you handle it poorly. But the whole thing is to come up and tell your truth and have a strength. And also to use your nonverbal skills as well. I can get people to shut up without yelling at them and making the room tense by slowing my words down, pausing, using that pause, working my way toward where those people are standing. All of a sudden they hear themselves talking, they stop, and then I go back. And that's manipulation. What you do is you manipulate the crowd. I put a velvet rope around the room, and everyone's important, VIP, in the room. And if someone fucks up, I work that part of the room until I don't, and then they might yell, I will not say anything, I will not pay attention, I will not answer, and little by little they will shut up. And it's a lot of manipulation. The key is to stage time. Then you get stage legs, where you're able to be up here and be so comfortable with what you're doing, and then you're able to play if you need to. You're able to go straight ahead with your material if you need to. But it's your show, it's your game. You brought the stuff to here, so use it and don't be afraid to manipulate. Don't be afraid to play. But stage time, stage time, stage time. That's the ultimate thing.
Question over here, but before you do, the worst question to ask is how are you doing? How's the crowd doing?
Yeah.
Before we move on, imagine if before you go on stage, you tell yourself, I just got to tell you guys about this. I just got, this is the greatest story I've got to tell you. And get yourself in that state of mind. Because if you go up and you keep asking questions, like Eddie said, insecurity, you're begging from the audience. If everything you say is, has anybody ever done this? What you're doing is you're saying, is it okay if I talk about this? And if you're on stage facing an audience with a mic in your hand, it's too late to have that conversation. You've got to go up there and tell them, this is what we're talking about, because it's important. And they'll come along with it.
And European audiences hate when the audience, because American comics are the one thing I've learned about traveling around the world. We are kissing everyone's ass and playing games and bullshitting. Good night. And but we do that. We like how many people? Let's hear it for the Army. It's like fuck you. You know that. Why are you getting applause off the backs of some people who shot somebody to stop pandering. There's so much pandering in the United States in the comedy world. Give yourselves a round of applause for coming out tonight. I've come out before. I've gone out. I don't need to applaud. Stop bullshitting me. In London, my very first line was, it's great to be here in London. Typical American bullshit. And a guy goes, bullshit! And I'm auditioning for the Comedy Store out there. And I go, you're right, it's a shithole, it smells like urine. And then they liked me because I got back at the guy. Luckily, then I was able to do the other 9 minutes. But they will not put up with that bullshit. And I've seen really great comics fail in Europe because they just go, another fucking American asking us questions and insecure.
And one time I performed in London, they said, don't expect them to applaud for announcements. I said, what do you mean? And they said, American comics will go up and say, so I just got married. And in America we applaud. And he said, we wait for the joke. And I thought, that makes so much more sense to just go, and you watch them, they go, so I just got married. And they're like,
yeah, and where's the joke?
Yeah, joke about it.
You had a question?
Okay, yes. I understand you tell your truth. What I'd like to know, what do you think is the funniest formula, and how do we find bookers and writers if we want to make it longer?
What was the last word of that? What is the?
Like, when you tell your truth, right, what is the funniest formula you can use, and how do we find bookers and writers if we want to make it longer?
Okay, well, take his class. I learned how to write jokes, and he's amazing at it. And, I'll let him go on from here.
Well, there's a lot of different ways to be funny. I'm very hung up on word economy. I think word economy is so important because it's something that's under your control. And it's to get, I'll put it to you this way, there's only two things you remember from listening to me go on and on about this. The first one is the joke starts off this long, it needs to end up this long. And say the funny part last, then stop talking. And those two things are usually, if you're struggling with a joke, it's because you have too many words, and that you said the funny part and you just kept rambling on and on. So always look for what's the quickest, most efficient way to say what it is I have to say. And this is not even considering what it is you're talking about. It's just a mechanical issue. Some people, I saw on Facebook a thread about, someone said, some people still think word last per minute is important. And all these people were going on and on about how unimportant last per minute was. And I went down the list and I thought, I don't see a single working comic commenting on this. Because if you got 5 minutes, and I said to you, which is better, 20 laughs in those 5 minutes, or 25 laughs? Who's going to say, I'll take the fewer laughs? So that is a mechanical thing you can try for, is always look for what's the quickest way. And a friend of mine asked me, he said, if you had a magic wand and could magically transform your act to be as efficient as possible, what would it be? And I said, I would go on stage, I would say one word, one syllable, and the audience would laugh for 45 minutes. Because I had picked the most perfect way to say that. And my friend said, if you're full of shit because you would tag it with something else. So, yeah, so word economy is something everyone can work on. That's just a discipline issue.
Yeah, same thing. Other questions? Right here, sir.
So you hear sometimes 10 years, I mean, I know 10 years and the magic wand doesn't wave, but kind of just a general guideline. Above and beyond, don't quit. What would you say to kind of intermediary, like people in years 5 through 8? Is there anything, you're not a beginner, you're not, I mean, we never quite arrive, but like, you're sort of in the middle of that magical 10 years. Is it knowing what you know now, like, is there anything above and beyond don't quit that you think?
Yeah, don't worry about what year. I was told 6 years and then boom, and I was doing well in 2 years. I was headlining and doing that. I wasn't great at it. I was just performing it well. My shit performed well, and then little by little the words caught up. So you don't want to put yourself in this thing and say I'm going to do it in 10. Last year I was pretty good at this. I've been doing it a long time. This year I'm much better than I was last year because I just want to get on stage. This weekend I was on stage, and tonight I'm on stage. You know, that it's something that I crave and I thirst for, and it's, you got to be crazy in a sense, in a good way, to really want this. And if you want it, you got to put the work in. Stage time and writing; those are the two most important things. And also hang out with other people and go. My best friend's not a stand-up, and I'll write a joke and I'll sit across the table from him and do it for him. And that's the one time through and record it. And then the second time he'll interrupt me and ask me questions in there, and then I'll come up with other answers to his questions, and then all of a sudden I have this other new piece of material. And then I'll also come in like ways to take words out, like Joe was saying, being economical with your words. You know, there's one joke where my joke ends with no iced tea. That's the punchline. No iced tea. It doesn't sound funny at all because it's not out. But in the place it's in, it gets a huge laugh. Only because I know the rhythms that are me. When comics start out, most comics, they act like their favorite comedians. I acted like Carlin. You look at Chris Rock and Eddie Murphy, or you know, what's his name? Seinfeld and Robert Klein. The hardest part is to find out who you are as a person. Once you find out who you are as a person, and you stop listening to the bullshit that we're told in politics and religion and advertising, that we're all pieces of shit, once you can stop looking at what that is going on and take hold of who you are, good and bad, then things start flowing like a river.
I'll say 2 things. One, enjoy the journey and don't look left and right and don't compare yourself to anyone else. Everyone has their own path and their own trajectory, and some people are more successful than not, and you'll drive yourself crazy if you keep looking at what other people are doing. I just am sending out an email tomorrow about this because it drives me crazy. I will say one way to definitely speed up the process without a doubt, and people will say it's not true, take classes. Everyone says you can't teach comedy. It's bullshit. You know, you could spend 5 years on stage trying to perfect your joke, or you could meet with a professional who can help you perfect it and teach you how to do it. You, just like I said, you could go do batting practice and sit and try to hit that fucking ball for an hour and then maybe get it, or you can get a coach that shows you what you're doing wrong and teaches you the right way to do it. So I think that's one way to speed it up. And yeah, it's just, you know, someone said to me, just like enjoy where you are. And then that will all come.
Right, and if everyone could do it, I mean, it would be, you know, but we can't all do it. Not everyone's funny. It's unfortunate.
As far as the number of years, I think the 2-year mark, if you imagine the comedy pyramid, it has a very wide base. Because most people watch out. Yeah, the first 2 years.
Very wide.
Yeah, because that's when your first 2 years, you're mostly suffering. Because you're on stage, you don't know what you're doing. And you can only do this in front of other people. You can give somebody a guitar and lock them in a room for 6 months, so when they make their debut, they might be pretty good. But this, you gotta take their lumps. So I feel like at the 2-year mark, if you make it through 2 years, forgot something or you're too crazy to know you should have stopped. And at the 2-year mark, they both have value. I used to think when I got to the 20-year mark, I'd be at the starting line. And I kind of think that's the way it is, that once I hit 20 years, I thought, oh, okay, I've been competent for a decade. I've been able to pull it off. But now what am I going to do with it? It's almost like you used to see those commercials for karate schools, and they'd show a bunch of 8-year-old black belts. And I think, yeah, can you kick my ass? Like, how the hell are you an 8-year-old black belt? You haven't existed long enough. So stay in the game, and as long as you make those little incremental improvements, because the competition is not you against anybody else. And it's very tempting to look at. Are you a little bit better than the version of you from yesterday? You'll have to fight getting. I have a friend. He complains nonstop about a club that won't book him, and I said, "Well, do you like working that much?" He goes, "No, the place is a shithole." I was like, "Well, then why? You use this energy to do something else." So, and there will be distractions, and there will be comics that you're friends with that you'll have to put them in a different category because they kind of got stuck and they'll drag you down. But just keep pushing ahead, you know.
And don't forget, it's a business, you know. Felicia's not running this room, you know, for free. So, and you know, the whole, well, in a sense, it's all for free. But the key is don't be bummed it's a business, because it is. You know, it's all a business in rock and roll and in every art form. It's a business, and you just want to work with the people who respect the industry as much. But I worked with someone recently that I didn't respect, and they didn't respect comedy very much. And I just had a good time despite that, you know, because I love comedy so much that I'm glad that every day that I wake up that I could do it. It's important.
Do what works for you. Like for me, setting goals and doing my special was a really big growth experience for me. And I felt like I just leaps and bounds and improved as a comedian as a result of that concentration. But we've only a couple more questions left, so if anyone has like what they think is a burning
Somebody all the way in
question,
the back.
go ahead.
In addition to the classes that you offer, do you recommend taking things like improv class to become more comfortable on stage, or
We teach everything here. I think acting for comedians, I think improv, I think voice lessons are really important.
Movement classes. Yeah. I took that when I was younger, didn't know why, and then I was so glad that I did.
That's the reason why I started the school, because I wanted to really have one place where you can learn everything, and it's on levels, so you move up from level to level to level, and you graduate from level to level. So you could be in level 1, like this, you know, we were saying some big lot of level 1. You can stay there for a long time, and if you're there for 10 years, you know, maybe you should give up comedy. But yeah, definitely, knowledge is power with everything. One more?
The writer, do you have any concern about AI in the future that could load everything that's you say, I want it in the voice of this person, here's all the material, that they could start replacing the writing? Or could that be an aid to you as a writer?
We are all robots.
Yeah.
We're not really here.
I've seen some AI written jokes, and they weren't bad. They weren't bad. It was kind of interesting to see that. I think it could be a tool, but it's kind of, to me, it's like arguing with the electric guitar make the acoustic guitar obsolete. It's just a tool. It won't replace the person driving the machine. Sometimes I think, are we going to eventually have AI writing jokes with AI laughing at it? The human won't be involved in it. Yeah, but you know, as much as I like to talk about writing, this is a thing that has to be performed for people, and I don't think a machine could ever do that. But I'm not worried about it. Again, my competition's not with other people. I'm not going to start sweating the Terminator, you know, pushing me out of the way for Joe. I say good luck if it can. It might just be as helpful as spell check or Google. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, the key is if you're writing your own stuff, that's the most important part of it. And the way they're getting AI is from other people's real stuff. So that's where it comes from. So you be a generator for AI. You make AI your bitch. You know what I mean?
So we have to end at 6:30. I do want to, we decided we were going to end with asking you guys, is there anything that you would like us to do or hear from us, or any seminars you think or you feel that would be beneficial to you. But since we have to break, we'll hang out for a little bit.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you. If you have a pressing question that you didn't get to ask, come up to us. And thank you for coming.
And one thing about, we should talk about our classes. So because my class is different, there's no levels. It's a workshop, which is different than a class. And I've been doing it for 23 years around the world. And I do it, it's like a 5-6 hour day, and we work our asses off, and then that's the end of that until you come back to the next one. But I'm doing one in early September, and I love doing it here. It's an incredible, great room and a great feeling. So you want to learn anything about when I'm doing it, just ask me at the end, and I'll give you guys my email address and all that kind of stuff.
The one I'm doing is, I believe, September 23rd. It's Eddie's course, got the whole big picture. Mine is just focused on writing for now, so it's really to come in and go through and say, here are some specific tips you can apply. This is some stuff to put in your toolkit you're going to use over and over again. So for now, I'm just doing a brief one-day workshop. Hopefully we'll do more, maybe on some Saturdays or something like that coming up later in the year.
Sounds
So
good.
Joe teaches you to write, Eddie will help you develop, and I'll break you down.
That's great. You had something here?
When you go to a workshop, do you bring in material? How does that work?
In my workshop, you bring 5 minutes. It's not so important what you do up here. It's what we do out here, how we deconstruct comedy together and look at it. And I've had people who've never done comedy before, and I have people who've done it I had a workshop in San Francisco of 25-year comics, 10 of them. And we all it was so great because everyone starts out like, oh yeah, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And everyone had new tricks when it was over. So everybody has a different one. I've started this thing, and I learned more and more about life and comedy. And like I said, it's out. The work in the room, it's out here.
But my class I teach is called My Type 5, because I'm very good at editing material down. That's what I think is my forte. So that's coming up next month, Monday nights here at the club. It's a 4-week program.
How much is that?
I don't know. Check online. And it's her birthday today. She has cupcakes.
Oh,
Yay!
Can you sing happy birthday to me?
Yeah.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, the girl with the cupcakes. Happy birthday to you.
Mine is bring jokes you want to work on. So it's bring like specific stuff for us to practice on.